Welcome to New York City and Mission City Church. We're here to connect people with God and with each other. We hope you're encouraged by this week's message.
I want to start with a question today. It's a question that may be easy to answer to yourself, maybe harder in certain social circles. But the question is, have you ever doubted? Have you ever doubted? And when I say doubted, I don't mean like minor doubt. I mean like you doubted everything. So if you count yourself a person of faith and you kind of feel like at some point or another you've had a grip on the world or kind of a grip on who God is and who you are and your identity and your role in this world and all of this, there comes a thing called doubt that can sometimes not just undermine a little around the fringes, but I'm talking about doubt that makes you just feel a downward spiral of who knows what is going on out here. This happened to me when I was in college. It was a really strange, I've had a really strange and abrupt version of this. I had just become a Christian who was engaged in my faith, at least. I would have always said that I was, but I became genuinely interested in the person of Jesus at this point, around 19 or 20. And when I was 21, I was at a college Bible study. And Bible study is kind of a strange term for this. There were like 1,000 people there. It was a worship gathering, okay? And for some reason, about midway through the second song, I like had my hands lifted and I'm just like in the worship bliss, you know? And then this thought, like almost like a thundercloud just like moved over my head, was like, what if nobody can hear me? You know, like what if we're all just doing this emotional exercise and we're trusting that we're worshiping someone and something, but what if like on the other end of the line, like somebody's not there? And all of a sudden, I'd been around church a fair amount and like all of the content of Christian faith just seemed so slippery. It was like someone threw like a bucket of ice water on a fire. My worship was over and it was so strange. It was unchosen. I didn't choose that. I didn't sow any seeds of doubt. It just came. It was like the weather. It just changed. I had no control over it whatsoever. And it just absolutely killed my vibe. And I like looked around and I just felt like an imposter all of a sudden. And it just the presence of doubt changed my entire emotional experience. I slept that one off and I woke up the next morning and it was over. So I don't know why it came. I don't know why it left. It was just a bizarre experience of like very aggressive doubt. I don't think it usually works that way, although maybe sometimes. I've also had seasons of doubt that take more of a concerted time to address and to think about. And there's more of the seeping doubt. You know what I mean by seeping, like kind of like a slow leak kind of a thing that you should really get around to addressing at some point, but it takes a little more time to do so. So doubt can take a lot of different forms. I've seen and experienced a lot of different ways of struggling with it and seen others do the same. But here's one thing I think we all have in common. I think we all have the same set of options once you have doubt. If you count yourself a person of faith, or maybe you count yourself not a person of faith, but doubt is what keeps you from doing so, I think when we have doubt, regardless of the cause, we all have a few options of what we could do with it. First, we could ignore it in hopes that it gets better, which doesn't necessarily feel honest, right? It's almost like denial. You could hide it and try to blend in. And if you're a person of faith involved in a church, you could try to hide it and blend in and kind of just pass for a Christian and kind of pass for a person who's kind of still in the flow of things and kind of play along, which doesn't feel beneficial because it would give you a feeling of kind of an imposter syndrome and prevent you from being welcomed as who you are instead of who you're not, right? So you could try to hide it, you could try to ignore it, or you could just formally punt your faith and say, you know, I deconstructed, and you could just say, you know what, I'm going to plunge my whole world into darkness because I felt a few shadows, and I'm just going to commit myself to this, and you could just totally move. A lot of people make all three of those choices. Or you could do something that I think is immeasurably more healthy, more helpful, and based in truth. You could say, you know what, maybe my doubt, which would be like hard to even say I have. Definitely hard to say maybe in my community group, or maybe hard to say, maybe very difficult for a variety of reasons because the momentum of my life has said that I've set my seal to faith, which means doubt doesn't seem to coexist with that. So you could say, you know what, maybe this uncomfortable doubt is an opportunity to rediscover Jesus. Maybe this doubt is actually an opportunity in disguise. Maybe if I can decide what to do with this thing I've got that I'm not really sure I had time to address, because after all, I've got a boss and a job and 4 emails and stuff and a side hustle and a relationship that I'd like to be in or whatever. And so in all of the rush of things that are going on, sometimes doubt kind of gets suppressed because when you've got so much stuff on the surface of life, who has time to deal with the big, massive questions too? You kind of need that to just like stay taped together, and it's kind of hard to find the time to really engage these things. But if you have doubt, there is such a thing as using it as an opportunity to rediscover and re-engage Jesus. Not just to re-catechize yourself, not just to re-preach to yourself, not just to run from it insecurely, and not just to pretend it's not there, but rather to actually engage it and engage the person of Jesus. We're in a collection of messages here called Together. The idea of this message collection has been that we are talking about things the church must do corporately, not just individually, if it's to be a church at all. So if you want to be a church, these are things that you do together. You worship together. You serve together. You even suffer together. The New Testament makes that normal. We grow together spiritually. We lead together, meaning we invite other people into a relationship with God and into a relationship with his house, with the church, with his people. And one thing I think is also critical that we do and admit, even though it starts on an uncomfortable note, is that we rediscover Jesus together. We're in rhythms of rediscovering Jesus together. And in fact, rhythms of doubt and rediscovery have been a part of our faith from the very, very beginning. In fact, from the first Easter, as we'll see. And we must be able, as a church, if we're to rediscover Jesus in this way, we must give ourselves permission to be human and see that doubt may be a part of our experience at times, and we must declare safety if we're to get to the other side of addressing doubt, which is to rediscover him. If the ultimate goal is to move through doubt and to rediscover him and to be all the more intimate with God and secure in God, if that's the goal, well, you've got to start with permission to be where you really, really are, even if it's really tough to say. So I just want to declare safety, okay? And that's hard because as a church, we are a faith community, not a doubt community. Those are like the literal opposites. So it's hard to be in a faith community and say that you have doubt. That's a hard thing to do. And I'm just declaring safety, no matter where you are, that you can go through rhythms of doubt and rediscovery. And in fact, that doesn't mean you're not a Christian. That means you are. Congratulations. So here is our this is our member covenant, basically. We give this to all of our new guests. If you're a new guest, we'll give this to you later here at the end. And at the end, or in this somewhere, is our beliefs statement. And it's basically a summary of the Christian faith. Here it is. 6 strong paragraphs. Does not say everything the Bible says. It's just a summary. It's just a basic version of like, here's what we're saying is true. Here's who God is. Here's who we are. Here's what the world is. Here's what sin and salvation is. And here's what I'm telling you. You might have signed one of these and then one day wake up and be like, I don't know, man. Okay, and if that happens to you, this message is for you. Or maybe just a part of God's moral guidance. Or maybe just a part of one area of your life that's kind of acting as a wedge of doubt between you and God. Whatever form your particular doubt may take, this message is either for you now or for you later, because rhythms of doubt and rediscovery are a normal part of the Christian life. Doubt is not the unforgivable sin. I'm investing a lot of energy here at the front to try to tell you doubt is not an unforgivable sin or problem. It's an opportunity to rediscover Jesus. And I think we have a positive example in a person who is usually held up for his doubts as a negative example. So there is a person, a disciple of Jesus, who on the very first Easter actually doubted that Jesus was truly risen. So the first Easter happens, Jesus rises again from the grave, proving every bit of truth that he ever claimed and validating every miracle that he'd ever done. In the climactic moment of the New Testament, Jesus is risen, the world has changed, and people's eternity has changed, and everything is different now, except for this one gentleman who had such a habit of doubting that we even nicknamed him, tell me, Doubting. See, you've heard of this person. He's famous for his doubt, okay? Well, I have good news. This person actually made room for you, okay? This person actually made room for you and for me to be human beings because right after Easter, how timely that it's a week after Easter, right after Easter, Thomas decides that he's not a part of the party. He's not a part of the celebration. He doesn't buy it. And he just so happens he's a former truster of Jesus. He was one of the disciples who had become a distruster of Jesus at a really key moment. So I have a hunch, by the way, that he didn't do it wrong, as many people often preach. The more I look at this text and the story of Thomas, I think he did it exactly right. I think he actually wrote a blueprint for what to do with your doubt. You be the judge. Here it comes. Now, Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. I think this is a metaphor for the emotional experience of doubt. You see, Thomas was not with them, so he had not seen the risen Jesus yet. When you have doubt, you feel separated. Oh my gosh. Like if you're struggling with doubt and no one knows over an area of your life or over the entirety of the Christian worldview, etc., if you are struggling with doubt, you just feel separate. You sit in this row, you sit in your community group, you sit with your Bible journal and your pen, and something's supposed to be happening, and it's not happening. And everybody around you is saying it's happening, everybody around you is worshiping God, and for you, it is just not happening. And you, even though you're of them, you're not with them, right? And that's what doubt does, is it seems to kind of move us to the side and makes you feel strange, it makes you feel cut off. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said to them, "Unless I see with my eyes in his hands the mark of the nails and place tactile, like I want to place my finger in the mark of the nails in his wrist, and I want to place my hand into his side where a Roman spear went to kill him, unless I can have these visual, direct, evidential experiences, I will never believe." The Greek is emphatic. I will absolutely never believe. Like he is planting his flag and he's saying, I don't care what I saw before the crucifixion. I don't care how many people he healed. I don't care how many people he fed with like 5 fish and loaves. Was it 5 fish, 7 loaves? 7 and 5? I'm sorry, I get confused. Anyway, I don't care. Thomas is basically saying, I don't care how many amazing things he did or has done. I am not going to believe in this unless I can touch him, unless I can see. It's a very, very high demand for evidence. We don't know his whole psychology. People have analyzed this from every possible angle. It might have been the old analytical mind. You know, some people say that like, I've got an analytical mind. So maybe it was the old analytical mind who just wants to disbelieve the miraculous. Maybe it's emotional dismay because he feels lost. Who knows? He's trying to kind of protect himself from disappointment. Who knows? Maybe it was despair because of crucifixion, or just disbelief because the crucifixion was so violent that it just didn't seem really overturnable. Not that death ever seems overturnable, but like death by crucifixion definitely would seem like final, you know. For whatever reason, he lands in a place of total doubt, and he gets a really bad rap here because he demands proof. And you know, the Easter party's going on and he's over there with his arms folded. But I think he did one really good thing that is actually repeatable, and I think it's probably pretty good advice for you and I. He named his doubts. Like he was at least willing to be like, all right, here's where I'm at. Like he was just like, here's my doubt. This is where I'm at. I'm just not there. He was self-honest. You see, this takes a lot of integrity. He wasn't, think about how it could have been so much pressure. I mean, he's one of the 12. Well, one was a betrayer. So now he's one of the 11. And the other 10 are like, their eternity has changed. Like they're rethinking everything in the best possible way. And he's the one of the remaining 11 that is not thinking about things that way at all. So it could have been so tempting to be like, you know what? They're so happy in their faith. I'll just keep this to myself. You know, there are so many reasons. I don't want to kill the party. I don't want to discourage them. After all, you know, maybe if I say this, maybe I'll sway them from their happy beliefs. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons why he could have like pressed it down, but he at least said it out loud. I think this is a good move to name your doubts. If something's bothering you, could be anything. If something is bothering you, it's probably not going away. And it doesn't do a lot of good to pretend. It would be much better to, even within the church, under a declared safety, as uncomfortable and challenging as it may be, as much as it may seem to kill the vibe, you can at least name your doubt. In naming your doubt, it doesn't mean you're declaring a position to leave the faith. It doesn't mean you're anti-God. It doesn't mean it just means, I have some doubts about X, Y, Z. This is a normal state of being at times. It's not a chosen state of being, no. It's not an ideal state of being, no, but it's a state of being. And you can at least always be honest with your state of being. Even if you can't make your doubts go away, you can at least be honest about where you're actually at. So Thomas trusts that his social circle and that God are big enough and strong enough to handle the fact that he's going through a moment of doubt. And he's at least willing to say that out loud. I think that's a step of integrity and actually a positive example. 8 days later, moving forward, 8 days later, which is a pretty long while if you're adrift in the universe and don't know who you are and don't know who God is. 8 days is a long time. 8 days later of feeling probably very disoriented, Jesus' disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them this time. And although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. Just a word on these mechanics. The doors were locked, and Jesus came and stood among them. So we don't know if this is like the old through the wall move. We don't know if this is like he unlocked the doors. Maybe he knocked, and they opened. And I don't know what's being suggested here. Any of the above are possible. Doesn't mess with me at all. No idea. All I know is he wasn't there, and then he was there. Okay, so the Bible doesn't say much more than that. So here he comes in, and he says, "Peace be with you," which is a standard greeting. That was just part of the way they greeted each other. Many cultures still say something like this in an initial statement or a closing statement of the interaction, or there's a "God bless you" at the front end or back end of the interaction. In the English-speaking West, we don't do a ton of this anymore. It's more of like a "what's up." We've kind of taken all spirituality and God out of our greetings. But in many, many cultures, this is a very common thing. So Jesus just gets in there and says a normal hello. And then he says to Thomas, "What's the matter with you? How could you let doubt in on Easter?" Anything wrong here? So this is actually not what the Bible says. This is not what Jesus says, okay? This is not what he says. This is what somebody like you and I might say. This is what you might say if you came back from the grave. You'd be out here like, "Doubt? You're talking about doubt? What? I told you. Like, you had one job. Trust me." Okay, like this is the route we would be tempted to go, okay? But this is not the route that he goes, okay? So he doesn't shame. He doesn't shame. This is what shaming would sound like, right? But here's what he really, really says. If you're nervous about me playing games on the screen, just look at your paper Bible, okay? This is what it really says. All right. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands," just like you said you would need to do. "And put out your hand and place it in my side," just like you said you would need to do. This is amazing for a few reasons. He's letting himself be reinvestigated by somebody who is already supposed to have a grip on this. Like he's submitting to the doubts of a human by letting himself be reinvestigated by someone who was already supposed to have a grip on this. Do you see this? This is crazy humility. This is a bizarre amount of humility. But Jesus is letting him, he sees that Thomas is kind of in spiritual no man's land and just isn't sure what's a fact, okay? So he lets him take it from the top and start to explore. This is so crazy because the entire New Testament, and certainly the book of John, was written to encourage belief. And right here at the climactic moment, we've got a believer who has lost their belief, and yet Jesus responds kindly and lets him take his time, do his tests, run his little processes. With all the security in the world, Jesus stands there, and he lets this happen. And not only that, this is the part I love. Jesus says the exact words that Thomas said were his conditions when Jesus wasn't in the room, right? So in other words, Jesus is aware of the doubt. Like he's a step ahead, not behind, you see? So when he wasn't in the room, Thomas is like, "I'm gonna have to see and I'm gonna have to touch." And then when Jesus is in the room, it's like he heard that. And then when he is in the room, he says that. Here's why that's important. Because Jesus is always a step ahead. And you know what your doubt whispers to you? Maybe he's a step behind. Maybe he's a step behind. Maybe he doesn't know where my mind has gone. Maybe he doesn't know what my conditions are. Maybe he doesn't know what I've been thinking about. Maybe he doesn't know what 300 years of post-enlightenment universities have been teaching people. Like maybe he doesn't know. And like all of a sudden doubt gets us really big and confident that maybe Jesus can't speak to our doubts, and he's always a step ahead, not behind. So he comes in and says, "I know exactly what you're thinking, okay? I know exactly what you're thinking, and it has no restraint over who I am," okay? So he is, just to confirm, Jesus is not up there right now like, "Oh my gosh, the Western Hemisphere has decided to disbelieve. What are we going to do?" Okay, like he is not nervous, okay? Like he's not nervous, he doesn't feel insecure, and he's certainly not worried about whatever questions you've come up with. They do not threaten him. They threaten? They seem to threaten us. We get nervous about doubt when we're doubting, He does not worry. He's fine. So in great humility, he lets this happen, and Thomas reaches out his hands, becoming a positive example, by the way, for the second time. He investigates sincerely. This is a good idea for you and me. So after you name your doubts, you should do this. You should investigate sincerely, right? You should look around. You should think a little more deeply in the Word of God. You should search the Scriptures to see if these things are true. There are lots of positive examples of that in the Scripture. So if doubt ever invades, this is kind of step 2, I think, of the Thomas Given playbook. That's a really good idea. Look around. okay? And look at a good source, by the way. Google, not sure, okay? Like that's more like a flood of information situation from a lot of perspectives. If you must, go for it, but like find a trusted guide and look, okay? Like peer into these things. And this is part of what will help security return to you, okay? Thomas needed to do this, all right? He needed to do this. If he could have just fast forwarded through the whole deal, probably would have. But for him, it was, I need to say this out loud. And now I've got 8 days. So there's, he didn't know if it was going to be 9 or 90. He didn't know. Then there's 8 days of waiting. And then there's, I want to re-explore this and take it from the top. And you know what? If you're a Christian in the space and you're like, I don't want to take it from the top. I've already had this kind of going. I just want to worship God like I always have. Well, guess what? If you've got doubts, you just might need to take it from the top. That's what it is to get reacquainted. Because if you do that, you might end up with a faith that's more acquainted, more informed, not just with information, but with the intimacy towards God. And by the time you get on the other side of this thing, you may have a much better grip on the fact that this whole thing is not about you hanging on to him at all, but about him hanging on to you, which is how this always ends. So investigate sincerely. And Thomas goes for the wounds in this case to look around. Here's why. Because wounds were sometimes used, this is a commentary, not scripture. Words were sometimes used as evidence in court, so you go look for evidence, sincere investigation. Wounds were sometimes used as evidence in the court or to show how much one had sacrificed for the cause. Here, in this situation with Thomas, their function is to identify that is the same Jesus who died. Scars could be employed to identify someone. So, Thomas goes and looks for a trustworthy place to prove this. This is probably not the exact thing you're looking for. If you have an unsettled doubt, it's probably going to have more to do with notions of truth and trustworthiness and whether knowledge is graspable, whether the Bible's trustworthy, whether the sexual ethics of the Bible are good for humanity or harmful. Like this is probably more the stuff. But whatever the stuff is, you should investigate sincerely, okay? You'll probably be shocked. If you've never done this and you're kind of like sitting there nervous about your doubts, I have good news for you. Somebody else has thought about this and written about it really well. Like you don't have anything new to unsettle. Like you haven't thought of a thing that's like, I wonder if any Christian has ever like engaged the Bible on this topic. Like it has been done. It is out there waiting to encourage you if you'll investigate sincerely. And Jesus at some point during the process of this says to Thomas, do not be disbelieving, but believing. And if you translate it, don't disbelieve, but believe, it kind of sounds like Jesus is telling Thomas, cross the line of faith one big time and never look back. And that's not what he's saying. He's saying, I want you to be in a posture of continual openness towards me. I don't want you to be in a posture of continual closedness and unbelief towards me. I want you to be in a continual, ongoing heart's posture of saying, you know what? Jesus, you can handle my rhythms of doubt and rediscovery, so I am going to continually keep my heart open to you. So Jesus is saying, don't be like this on an ongoing basis. Be like that on an ongoing basis. That's what Jesus is saying. Not just saying, declare faith one time permanently, although an initial decision is absolutely important from a standpoint of identity, clarity, all that's important. That's why we baptize people who are new to the faith, because that first initial step is important. However, in this interaction, Jesus doesn't tell Thomas, I want you to make a one-time decision. I want you to be continually open. And here's another reason why that's important. If we overemphasize the personal decision as a standpoint of security, what do we do when we doubt? Doubt our own decision. Because then it becomes about our own mental strength, doesn't it? And when you lose your grip on that, it's hard to look back at your own decision and trust that. We're not trusting in our own decision, okay, church? To be in the faith, you're not trusting in a decision you made when you were 8 or 18 or 28. You're not trusting in a decision you made. You're trusting in the work of Christ on the cross and resurrection, right? So you're trusting in Him, not in your own certainty, okay? We're trusting in Him. It's important to make the decision, but the basis of our faith is not our personal decision made in 1990 whatever or 2020 whatever. It is the decision He made to die and rise again. Okay, so that is much more stable to set your seal to. And Jesus is saying, look, I don't just want you to declare a one-time decision, because that might not be stable. What about the next time doubt comes? I want you to be in a continual posture of trusting me. Don't be disbelieving, but be believing. Stay believing. And I don't know if it was 10 seconds later or 10 minutes later, but Thomas lands here. he has an epiphany of faith. Okay, he has a re-entry from disbelief back into belief, a genuine sight where he says, my Lord and my God. Emphatic. So he comes to the realization at some point that his doubts were wrong. Okay, I don't know if it was a process. I would love to have been there for this, because I don't know. Maybe this goes on for a minute where Jesus is just like waiting and he's like poking, and like taking a while. I don't know how long or awkward it was. I just know at some point Thomas lands on, this can't be, but it is. And this is amazing. And he's energized. And it's not just Lord and God, which is like a really clear statement of divinity, but it's personal, right? My Lord, my God. So he is in a posture of personal humility and renewal. There was no way to fast forward to this point. There was no way to fast forward to this point. He had to name his doubts, investigate sincerely, and he lands in this place. Note also that he doesn't say, wait, run this by me again. Okay, so he needed verification. He didn't need endless verification, okay? Affirming again that doubt is not a destination, okay? It's not a place we want to stay, and it's not a place we can always control how quickly we get out of, but it's not a place we want to stay. And so he is shocked, but he realizes the only implications of this is to trust and to move forward. I mean, it seems too crazy to be true, but it's too obvious to be false. So I'm going to trust him, and I'm going to be believing, and I'm going to move forward. And he makes this famous confession of faith at the end of the Gospel of John, which is about stirring up faith. And so when we think we're the steady one, all of a sudden we lose our grip. Jesus lets us reinvestigate, and we realize, you know what, this was never about my ability to stay affirming of him. This is about his ability to hang on to me, and I am secure because no amount of doubt can constrain who he is. So I think what Thomas did is something humble. It takes humility after this whole process, okay? So if you've kind of folded your arms and you're like, unless I see, like, nah, just no, unless I see, it's just not going to happen, So that's a posture. At some point, it's a posture of pride. It could be a posture of honesty, but at some point, doubt can become about committed human arrogance at some point. And then it's hard after you've kind of folded your arms to end up right here and just be like, my Lord and my God, and just be like, I have nothing left to say. Like I have been silenced by the fact of the risen Jesus, okay? So Thomas is willing to humble himself, and publicly, after saying, here are my doubts, he's willing to fall back in line, and he's willing to say he is who he's always claimed that he is. And that humility is so key, because at the end of the day, it is not about, if you're stuck in doubt, I want to tell you, you're not going to be led back to Jesus by academics, not even Christian academics, not even good Christian academics. You're not going to be led back just by evidential type stuff, okay? There's not like a single piece of information that's going to make my Lord, my God come out of your mouth, okay? It is about the humility and the willingness to be believing. It is about the humility at some point to just be believing, okay? In light of the implications that seem clear, are you willing to take a posture of humility? And what Thomas does here is he then humbly follows with the faith he has. Okay, this is the last and final thing I think we can draw from Thomas that's helpful. Humbly follow with the faith you have. So he's willing to go humble, and he's willing to follow. It's not just my God, my worldview, it's my Lord. Okay, so this is my leader. With the faith you have. Okay, Thomas probably wasn't out of questions, Like he probably was like, but how? There was still more swirling up there, like I'm sure, right? So I'm not sure he was done with his questions, but I think he was done with the questions that prevented him from following Jesus. So you go with the faith you have. If you have an imperfect faith, great. Did you know that the New Testament presents faith as a spiritual gift that some people have? So what this means is strength of faith is kind of on a spectrum. Some Christians have a really, really, really strong faith and a gift of faith, and Jesus is just fact. And if you've ever been around these people, it's so refreshing, because you're like, they're just not struggling. Like, they're just not struggling. Like, they just got it. Like, they're just like, God is real. I trust Jesus. And if you ever need to be reminded, you can call me, because I'm there. All right? And then there are others of us that are just not there at all. There are others of us that constantly seem to be in the doubt rediscovery kind of rhythm. Okay? And Jesus makes room for every single one of us. But here's what we all must do. All of us, 100% of us, whether your faith is weak or strong or partial or whatever, to humbly follow him with the faith you have. Give him the green light with the faith you have. Don't give him the yellow light, okay, because of the doubt. Don't give him the red light because of the doubt. If you do that, you're going to plunge your whole world into darkness because of a few shadows. That is a mistake, all right? Go forward humbly with the faith that you have. Whether it's weak or strong, somewhere in the middle, just go forward with the faith that you have. This will keep you from leaving the church of faith and entering the church of doubt. You know, there are organizations, there are people, there are Instagram accounts, there's people all over TikTok. If you want to be part of the hundreds of thousands that are lifting their fist against God with all of the Thomas-y questions, then you can go be a part of that. I just don't think it's going to make you happy, healthy. It's certainly not going to make you faithful. So humbly go forward with the faith you have. Are you willing to say, my Lord, my God? And then we get mentioned. This is fun. Jesus said to him, have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those, happy are those people who have not seen and yet have believed. Blessed are the people, the generations of people that are coming continents away from here, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years away from here, who are going to have never seen me and yet are going to find that it is a well-reasoned choice to trust in me as a fact. So Jesus says, look, have you just believed for this reason? And then he mentions us. Blessed are those, that's us, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. So this is possible. So if you're sitting there like, you know what? Let's go another step forward. If you're sitting there, you're like, you know what? But Thomas got to see him. Like, I didn't get to see him. I just need to see him. There's not enough evidence for me. I get to say what Thomas said. I want to see him. And I want to say, if you're there, it's probably indicative of a posture that even if you did see him, you probably would not believe him. Like, even if you did see him, you probably would not believe him if you're saying that. Did you know that not everyone who saw the risen Jesus believed in him? Like, not every single human being who saw the risen Jesus put their trust in him. Some people were like, maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was a hoax. Maybe he didn't really die. Maybe that's his, twin brother that they planned this the whole time or something. Like, there's always something crazy you could say to get yourself out of the evidence. I had a seminary professor one time who said, he was talking to a person who said, you know what? If I could just see the resurrected Jesus with my eyes and repeat the Thomas thing, I would believe in Jesus. And my seminary professor told the guy, no, you wouldn't. You'd check yourself into a mental facility. Because you'd find a way to disbelieve your eyes. Like, you are not postured to humbly go forward with the faith you have. Like, you are just going to say no to whatever is in front of your face. Your no can function like a buoy on water. You know a water buoy on a lake? Like, no matter how high the lake goes, that buoy is just going to go up. Okay? Your no can stay on top of the evidence. The evidence can just pile up and pile up and pile up. And if you're committed to a no, that no is just going to keep rising. Okay? You're going to find a way. Your no can find a way to stay on top of Jesus. Which is why a yes involves coming under his leadership and under his lordship and saying, my Lord and my God. Last verse for the day. Jesus says, or rather, this is the narrator. Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. Many, many other things that are not even written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe. He's given away his motive. He's like, I want you to believe him. Like, I want you to trust him. This is written so that you can trust him and that you may believe in Jesus and by believing have life in his name. This is why pastors, churches, people in your community groups, parents, friends, whoever, spouses, this is why people want you to believe in Jesus. It's not because it's worldview, tradition, whatever, and like it would be disruptive if you didn't. Those are really bad reasons to stick with Jesus. A good reason would be like because you find life in his name. Okay, that's what this is about, to find life in his name. So that by trusting, by believing, you may have life in his name. Why would you address your doubts in this way? So that you can not just believe him and fulfill some kind of promise of consistency to yourself, but that you may have life in his name. That's the whole point why Jesus came. He said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly, and that comes through faith. It comes by trust. Sermons and Bible studies and community groups and community engagement efforts and worship and our elder team and our greeters and our setup teardown team and the Bible was given to us so that we can trust him and find life in his name. That's what all of this is pointing to. And when you do that, you really never know what he's going to do next. So this is amazing to me that Thomas actually, upon recovering his faith, became a missionary and took the gospel of Jesus east. Did you know this? He took it east to India. So this is how the gospel of Jesus, early church tradition is unanimous without a single disagreeing voice, that Thomas, after this whole episode, doubting Thomas, became believing Thomas, and then went to India, which took the gospel for the first time to an entire subcontinent. So the name Thomas, this is fun, the number one country in the world where Thomas is the name is the United States. Okay, but let's get over that one for a second. Okay, the second most is India. The second most is India, okay? So after Thomas puts his trust in Jesus and decides, you know what, I'm going to be believing here. I'm not going to be disbelieving. I'm going to find life in his name again. After he does all this, he goes to the subcontinent of India, where hundreds of thousands of people are named after him, first name and last name. So here's why I'm telling you this. God's too creative to do the same thing twice. So I'm not sure what he's going to do with you on the other side of your doubts. Something, okay? You don't know what's on the other side of your doubts. Think about that for a second. You have no idea what God wants to do with you. Does not matter that you have doubt. Doesn't matter how bad. Doesn't matter if you're a repeat offender on doubt. It's okay. You just never know what God is going to do with you after your doubts. For Thomas, this was it. For you, I'm not going to lie to you. You're probably not going to have a whole subcontinent of people with your name. If you want that, that'd probably be bad anyway. But you have no idea what works, what opportunities to serve God might be just waiting on you on the other side if you hang in there. Name your doubt, investigate him so that you can find life in his name and go forward with the faith you have. All right, let's pray together.
Thanks for being with us. If these messages are strengthening you in your faith, we want to hear from you. Find us online at missioncity.nyc or email us at info@missioncity.nyc so we can celebrate everything God's doing in your life. We'll see you next week.